Hello, everybody. It's Linen, and today I am finally talking about why I associate with the word witch. Finally, since the channel inception, I've been wanting to figure out how to put this into words because, to be quite honest, it's pretty hard to say why I call myself a witch. Because to me, the word means more than what people think, in my opinion. Lots of people either fear the word witch, there's a lot of fear and like dogma around the word, or there's like kind of like this instant kind of a feeling. That's either one of the two. And when I started down, I will start at the beginning. My spiritual practice started out as the craft, not spiritual, more spell work, craft work, like more of an abstract witch kind of a thing. That's how it started. That's how I started out. And then after a few years, I started learning about more and more things, like just piled it up into my brain like a big filing cabinet. And then I started thinking, okay, well, this does really resonate with me, and this sounds a lot like me, and this sounds a lot like what my practice does now. And so I started incorporating all kinds of things into my practice that led me to now, which is more of a craft plus spirituality work that I do. Many people think of the term magic or witchcraft, and if they're interested in this, okay, I'll say a good interest. They are interested in witchcraft, the craft, the art, or spirituality in general. Most seem to think that it's like instant power. Like, oh, all of a sudden I'm a witch. I can do anything, I can manifest anything, and blah, 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 and just blast everybody with my lightning, And that's not really what it is. When I started loving reading about witches, and I was always drawn to the witches in stories, but I would read about Baba Yaga and fall in love with her. I fell in love with Maleficent. I fell in love with, and I'll say actual magical power people in Disney. Cartoonish, like Madame Mim. If they had magical powers, I fell in love with them. And I think it wasn't because they were malevolent. It was, I think, more of the fact that they could wield their power to get what they want in those certain instances. What they wanted just happened to be cutting people out of their way. Especially in terms of like Snow White's queen and Maleficent. It was more of an evil, black magic. Even when you go back and watch Snow White, her only thing, like her witchcraft, was about wielding beauty, right? If you really think about that, she could want to be beautiful because she was always rejected, what if she was constantly told she was plain or homely or, ugly? Of course I would start resorting to some pretty bad shit just to know and hear that I was actually beautiful. I would start really wanting to manifest some shit that would make it happen because I started believing that I wasn't. If I was rejected so much, this is probably what happened to this queen, She was queen by blood, but nobody liked her and all that. There's just a whole bunch of active imagination realms you could go down to figure out why she had turned out evil. But so most people think it's like instant power. I don't think of it that way. To me, after researching what it really means to be a witch and what it really means to actively have a spiritual practice, think doctor's office practice. You go, they are there every day, they have a schedule, they're jotting things down, they're figuring out the symptoms, That's what we do. When we have a practice, or me, okay, my practice is all about, yes, writing things down, figuring out all of my symptoms, good or bad, figuring out who I am on the inside and outside, outer and inner beauty. It's a whole bunch of sitting down with your eyes closed, figuring out what's going on in here. That's what my practice is. That's what my witchcraft is. A lot of sitting down with my eyes closed. And sometimes my eyes aren't even closed. I just zone out. And lots of imagination work, lots of journey work, lots of astral work. And the work is in here. What we saw in movies and read in books about the lightning and the gust of wind, that is that witch's work and that power doing all of that in here. So when I dive into self, and when I dive into the imagination for self work and for inner work and to activate the imagination and expand intuition, those are those gusts of wind. When I feel that power, it's like when the power is imminent. We see the personification of those witches' power outside of themselves, so that we know that power is real. It is real. But in a real life setting, those lightning bolts are in here. And every time I activate them, they're going like this in my body and in my brain. That's what's happening. Those lightning bolts and those, airbender gusts of wind is happening in here. That's what coming into the power is. Recognizing you have power to begin with. And like when spells don't work. It's like spark plugs. The lightning, there's like a spark. But you're not putting the work in to... I'm going on a whole bunch of analogies here, but that's kind of how I think of inner power, witch power. That's how I think of it. Witches that come into their power, like so many that share their story on YouTube or blogs or whatever, they have years of experience. Much like Snow White's queen, Maleficent, They are working years. They're reading, like if you see that gif where she's got that black magic alchemy book, she's been studying her craft forever, she feels like, and knows exactly where her power is in her brain and in her body. That's what it takes. It takes work. It takes practice. And the people out there that don't necessarily think that it's just instant, the power is always there, whether you're first starting out or whether you've been experiencing it for years. Building the power. And when you first start, I noticed this in myself, there was a lot of doubt. There was a lot of, did that really work? Did I do that? Because I hexed someone when I was young, and it's a pretty scary story. It scared me to the point where I stopped doing spells for a long time and started just focusing on me instead of we're getting into the topic of baneful magic, okay, because she was a real bitch. But I've always been an outcast, and I didn't have a lot of friends. I got made fun of and bullied a lot. So when it came time for this particular girl to be my friend, and she really wasn't, some hexes were thrown and some bad shit happened to her, and I still think about that to this day. But I want to talk about what I was saying. People on the path have years of experience with not only the aesthetic and not only the extraordinary that they've done, but the mundane stuff, the everyday things. They are being mindful of what that cup of coffee is doing to their body, and what, they'll put their hand on their heart and feel their heartbeat because they're having an anxiety attack. They're mindful of all of that. Every little thing, every big thing, day-to-day basis thing. day-to-day basic magic with a K that happens in your day-to-day life. Finding the magic within your day-to-day life. And the powerful witches to me are the ones that are recognizing that and they're mindful of all that. They have journaled so much and they have astral traveled so much. They know so much about their power and when to wield it. I love that quote by Gandalf, that it's not when to take a life. It's when to spare one. And knowing the difference. That's what wielding witchcraft power is. Knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them, all of that. You have to know yourself to know when is the best time to wield the power and when is the time to sheath your sword. And people on the path for years, they know that already. They know how to do all that. They know how to protect themselves. And that's important too. They've done it all. They know what has backfired. They know what research and what books that they've read resonated with them because they've read them all already. And that's what it takes. That's the work. You know, when I first started, I read everything that I could get my hands on. Coincidentally enough, all the books back in my childhood were all about Wicca. And I already knew because there was a girl in my school that was Wicca that kind of explained some like fundamental things. We weren't even really friends. I think we were at lunch and she was explaining something and I just overheard. So I did research it when I started my witchy journey, and I realized that I didn't want that type of a, I didn't want to go down that kind of a path, and I knew that early. So I tried to get my hands on like hereditary, traditional witchcrafty books and more along the lines of witchy crafts, herbs, those types of books. Those really helped me because at the beginning for me it wasn't so much learning about witchcraft specifically. It was more along the lines of, you know, cultivating my herb garden and planting my own vegetables and, you know, saying some soul speech, which I do a lot. I think Joey Morris has said something about soul speech a lot on her channel. And when I first heard her say that, I was like, you do that too? I mean, it was just uncanny. Like, I don't ever think I've actually said that into a comment before, but I should, because she would probably like that. But I soul speech and have my whole journey. And so when I soul speech, when I'm mixing like spaghetti, that's putting my magic in there, and it's being mindful of my magic and my power going into that spaghetti. And it's going to be nutritious. And those are the types of things that I would research and read about. And fiction too. All the stories about fiction that involved a witch, good or bad. And even like some resource materials. I showed a few already on the channel that I read, like Signs and Symbols book and mythology, all the mythology, and certain witch and witchcraft books that were just kind of like kiddish. Those are powerful things. Like how you explain it to kids is how you need to learn in the beginning, to me, because you're beginning. But the ones that want instant magic, they don't know those things. They don't know that the ones that they resonate with online, like say I have a YouTuber that I love, that I'm like, man, dang, every video they do really resonates. It's like they've got years on me. They've got literally 1,000 more books read than me. They've got 1,000 more spells that they've done and backfired, and that more than me. And that is important to be mindful of too. You know, you're never going to know as much as whoever, or as much as you want, because it's you, not so much the YouTuber, but it's what's all resonating with you. You got to know more than you do so that you can pile up your filing cabinet worth of stuff. And I always, you know, like Harry Potter lovers, like for me, I love binge watching that every time. I just want to feel witchy. That is outer magic. Like I was saying before about the lightning and the wand work, you know. We see all that happening in this movie. But I feel like real power, coming into your power, coming into you being a witch, is all here. Holding the wand, wielding the wand is in here. And I feel like we get so roped up in the aesthetic of it that a lot of people don't know that there's all kinds of sparks happening when you read something and you're like, yes, 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 yes. Or, you know, and that's firing sensors. And then if you read something and you're like, no, that literally that fuse just dies, shrivels up and dies. And it's not serving you, so it can. To me, what's the most important thing about my spiritual practice, my coming to terms with the word witch for me, and coming into terms with my own power and my own magic, is that it's mine. Being mindful of that this is my practice. This is my magic. These are my lightning bolts, and I can have as much power as I want. You know? You are going down this path. It's up to you to know what's best for you. It's up to you to know, like, oh, you know, that spell that I read about last night on the internet is really, really cool. But if you're not going to actually try it, or even like what I like to do, if I read something and it really resonates and I think it is, but somebody wrote it, somebody else, I think, okay, well, let's change the words a little bit to make it more for me. That's how I am coming into my power, and I'll wield my own lightning bolt even though somebody else made this up. And then if it doesn't work, I'll like, okay, well, I'm gonna throw that away. or put that in a journal somewhere, and you can come back to it in a few years. You might say, oh, that's why that didn't work. Those are good things. Both are okay, but you got to figure out which one to do. I think it's important to represent yourself in a pure sense, to know your feelings. And your magic and your power is representing you. And that is a beautiful thing, but you got to know, whether or not it's you. And if you don't, then it's not serving you. You have to be at peace with a decision. And when you're at peace with the decision, again, that's you being at peace with your power. And being prepared mentally and physically. Protection, those are important things. And no matter how many protection spells or chants that you read about, you're not going to know what works unless you get yourself into a space and into a mindset and just, you might say, I want this barrier around me. I'm picturing a light barrier, and nothing that I don't want is coming inside this barrier. It can be as simple as that. But it has to be you. It has to be yours. It has to be your protection. And no, I don't care how much you read, but armchair practicing is not going to cut it. It's not you coming into your power. I've read 1,000 books on all kinds of stuff in my spiritual practice. And maybe I incorporate just a little bit. 1 book's worth of stuff that really jives. Most of the time, I make up my own shit. I literally make it up on the fly. But it works because that's me, and that's coming into myself. And that's me being at peace with the decision of the ritual or decision of a spell. That's powerful stuff. There's a power that lies within all of us. And we don't see it. Some of us don't see it forever. The power we have over our children, like the power that we have over them, not in a malicious way again, but like how we read to them and it puts them right to sleep because of the cadence of our voice, right? That is magic. When I read to my boys, or when I used to, they're old now, but they're older. They don't need me to read to them. But when I used to, I read every night and I put them to sleep. And I used to go, that was magic. That was powerful. It is powerful. When you cook dinner for your family or whoever, and there's no talking because they're too busy scarfing it up because it's so delicious. Doesn't happen all the time, right? Because I can't cook worth shit. But when it does, I'm like, I feel the silence because it's a good silence. And that is magic. And that's mundane magic. That's everyday magic. And when you start recognizing everyday magic, the extraordinary magic is so much bigger. The power you know is inside of you, right here, in your lightning bolt fingertips. It's beautiful things. So, I hope that this witchy ramble chat about me coming into my power, me recognizing the word witch, was fun. And I will be talking about it more on the channel. But I wanted to do an introductory video kind of a thing as to why I call myself that and how much work is involved, well, and was for me and still is. It's ongoing. So, I hope that everybody comes back and sits with me for another chat in the future. Who knows what the next one will be? We'll see. Much love, everybody.